He went to the door to collect the overdue rent, and the millionaire never expected to find a scene like that one. A thin little girl with tired eyes, sewing by hand, exhausted, trying to finish one more dress to help her mother. What he didn't know yet was that this girl was about to change his life completely. Nathan Cole stepped out of his luxury truck without even bothering to close the door. He was irritated. He'd had a day full of tedious meetings, and on top of that, he had to drive out personally to collect rent from a tenant who was 3 months behind. He couldn't understand how people failed to handle something so basic. He walked down the long hallway of the old building, the one they barely kept standing on the cheapest repairs money could buy. The smell of damp plaster hit him first, and somewhere down the corridor an old blender buzzed away in someone's kitchen. When he reached apartment 4B, he took a breath and knocked hard. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Then he heard something. Small footsteps, careful, hesitant, moving toward the door. It opened just a few inches. What he saw stopped him cold. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, with messy brown hair and eyes so big they seemed too large for her thin face, looked up at him from below. Her lips were chapped and her clothes were stained with colored thread. She didn't say a word. She just watched him the way a child watches an adult they expect to be scolded by. Nathan crouched down, a little startled, and asked if her mom was home. The girl shook her head. Not a word, just a slow, silent no, her eyes wide open the whole time. He figured the mother had stepped out for something, but then he noticed, behind the girl, an old sewing machine with a hand crank, and on the table beside it piles of fabric scraps, spools of thread, needles. The girl had been sewing. Not at school. Not playing, not watching cartoons. Sewing, with pinpricks all over her hands and thread marks pressed into her fingers. "Are you here by yourself?" he asked, and even to his own ears his voice came out softer than usual. The girl hesitated, looked down and pushed the door open a little wider. Nathan didn't want to walk in without being asked, so he just leaned in to get a better look. The apartment was dark, the curtains drawn, the air stale. A chair wobbled in the corner, the refrigerator looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years, and on the stove sat a pot with something burnt inside. What struck him hardest was the little bed set up in the living room, thin sheets, a torn blanket, and beside it empty medicine boxes. Everything clicked at once. "Is your mom sick?" he asked without moving. The girl looked at him again, nodded but added nothing. Nathan didn't know what to do. It wasn't the first time he'd seen poverty. He'd grown up in a rough neighborhood himself, a long time ago, but it had been years since he'd stood face to face with something this raw. He pulled out his phone, pretending to check something, and asked the girl her mother's name. "Sarah," she said quietly. Then, as if embarrassed for saying that much, she went back to the sewing in her hands. Nathan asked about the rent, though it no longer felt important to him. The girl said her mother had left an envelope under the mattress. She ran off without letting go of her needle and came back seconds later with a crumpled envelope. Nathan opened it. Almost empty, just a few small bills, barely $40. He said nothing. This wasn't the moment to argue about money. As the girl went back to her machine, he stood frozen in the doorway. He couldn't just turn and walk away, but he had no idea how to help without it sounding like pity. The girl switched the machine back on, and the rhythmic clatter of the pedal filled the awkward silence. Nathan didn't leave. He stood there watching her push the pedal with tired feet, watching her head nod with exhaustion as she kept going, as if she had no other choice. Something cracked open inside him in that moment. It wasn't pity, it wasn't guilt. It was something closer to anger, anger with nowhere to go, at the mother, at the system, at himself, for never having noticed something like this before. He didn't even understand how a child had ended up alone, doing work that would exhaust a grown adult. He noticed a small drop of blood on her fingertip. She wiped it on her shirt without complaint and kept sewing. "What's your name?" he finally asked. She hesitated, then said, "Lily," and went back to her fabric. Nathan reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, took out several bills, and set them on the table without a word. Lily didn't even glance at them. She kept sewing. He left the apartment without fully closing the door behind him, as if leaving it ajar marked the difference between walking away and staying a little longer. Back at his truck, he sat down without starting the engine. For the first time in a long while, he had no idea what to do. He only knew that little girl shouldn't be alone, and that her story was only just beginning. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying what he'd seen. A little girl sewing alone as if she had to save the world, in a building that could barely hold itself up. He hadn't even had it in him to press her about the rent. It felt wrong, unjust, in a way that went past sadness. The next morning he woke up early, something he almost never did, unless work demanded it. Instead of driving straight to his office, he detoured to a corner store and bought bread, crackers, a few basics. It wasn't much, but it was something. He didn't want to show up empty-handed again. When he knocked at 4B, softer this time, Lily opened the door faster. Her hair was tied back with an old rubber band, same clothes as yesterday. Nathan held up the grocery bags. "Brought you a few things," he said. Lily eyed them warily, didn't move. He set the bags down and crouched to her eye level. "Can I come in for a minute?" She didn't say yes, but she stepped aside. Inside, things looked about the same. Maybe a little tidier, but the place still smelled of stale air and medicine. He asked if she'd eaten. She shrugged. "Tortillas with salt," she said quietly. He sat on the one chair that seemed stable. "Is your mom still in the hospital?" She nodded, eyes down. "How long?" 3 days. "And who's taking care of you?" "Nobody. I'm fine." Something in his chest tightened. He couldn't picture a child going through this with nobody stepping in. "Why were you sewing yesterday?" Lily looked up, and for the first time she seemed willing to talk. "I have to deliver some pillowcases. Miss Patty gives me a few dollars if I get them done right and fast." "Who's Miss Patty?" "Lives on the 3rd floor. She taught me to sew when Mom got sick." "What does your mom have?" Lily went quiet, bit her lip, glanced at the door like she wanted to bolt. Nathan watched her wrestle with it. She wanted to protect the secret. That much was clear, but some part of her also wanted somebody to know. "Leukemia," she said at last, barely above a whisper. The word sat heavy in the air. Nathan already suspected as much, but hearing it from a 7-year-old hit differently. "What do the doctors say?" "That she needs medicine and blood and an operation." "Do you have insurance?" "No." Nathan rubbed his face. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't a lawyer, wasn't a social worker. He was a businessman who closed deals from an air-conditioned office, and here he was, in a room where the light barely made it through the curtains, listening to a 7-year-old explain that her mother was dying and that she was sewing to survive. "Why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" Lily shrugged. "I figured if you knew, you'd kick us out, or call child services on me." That landed like a blow. He hadn't even considered it, but now it all made sense. Lily wasn't afraid of strangers. She was afraid of the system, of adults who make decisions without asking, of being taken from her mother. "I'm not going to do that," he said, firm. "I'm not taking you anywhere without your say-so. I just want to help." For the first time, Lily looked at him with something close to trust, not quite believing it, but wanting to. "Who even are you?" Nathan smiled a little. "Let's just say I own this building. But today I'm not here as the landlord. Today I'm just Nathan." She nodded slowly, then went and poured him a cup of water in a plastic tumbler, her own quiet way of saying it was fine for him to stay a while longer. As she showed him the pillowcases she was working on, Nathan noticed something else. A notebook in the corner full of drawings, Lily and a woman lying down with tubes running to her, a smile drawn a little sad, a heart between them, and underneath, in crooked handwriting, "Everything's going to be okay, Mom." Nathan knew right then that he had to do something, whatever it took. He left the apartment with his chest aching, that image of Lily bent over the sewing machine looping through his mind, a 7-year-old, alone, working for pocket change while her mother fought leukemia in a public ward. He hadn't lived like this in a long time, and it unsettled him how quickly the polished routine of boardrooms and quarterly reports could feel like a different planet from that hallway. Before heading out, he stopped by 3A, where old Rosalind Carter lived, the neighbor who saw everything from her window and never pretended otherwise. "Morning, Miss Rosalind," Nathan said, keeping it casual. "You're the landlord, aren't you? I wanted to ask about the tenant in 4B. Rosalind pulled the door wide and waved him in without waiting for the question. That poor girl, Sarah. She's been fighting that blood cancer for months. Leukemia, they call it. Losing her hair already. And little Lily, bless her heart, she's been on her own ever since her mama went back into the hospital. No family that I ever heard of. Sarah never talked about her past, just said she didn't want to be a burden on anybody, that all that mattered to her was her daughter. And that child? She's an angel. Gets up early, buys the bread, cleans the house, does the laundry by hand, and sews on top of it. Miss Patty from downstairs taught her. Comes by now and then to check her stitching, but most of the time that girl's alone. Sometimes I hear her crying at night, but what's an old woman like me supposed to do? Nathan felt a lump rise in his throat. Do you know which hospital her mother's in? Cleveland General, downtown in oncology. I brought a blanket over once because those nights get cold in there. Nobody visits her, just the girl when she can. Nathan thanked her and left in a hurry. He called his assistant to cover an important meeting and drove straight to the hospital, stopping to grab fruit, juice, and a thick blanket along the way. When he got there, the place hit him hard. People asleep in plastic chairs, others waiting on the floor, nurses rushing everywhere. He found Sarah on the third floor, thin, pale, hair cropped short, as if cut before it could all fall out on its own. A nurse asked if he was family. Friend from the building, he said. He sat beside her, left the fruit on the metal tray table. Hi, Sarah, I'm the landlord. Well, was, since you're here now. I just wanted you to know your daughter is a fighter. Sarah didn't answer, but her lips moved slightly. He left the hospital feeling like the world had gone a shade grayer. These weren't just a tenant and a kid anymore. They were people with real pain, people the system quietly let slip through the cracks while everyone else looked away. That night, Nathan decided he wasn't going to help from a distance with checks and favors. He was going to do it for real, even if it meant trouble, even if it meant going up against people in his own company. He came back the next Saturday before sunrise, this time without knocking. He filled up on groceries, rice, beans, milk, soap, fruit, canned goods, bandages and antiseptic for Lily's pricked fingers, parked his truck a block away so it wouldn't be recognized, and left the bag stacked outside 4B's door, tucking an envelope of cash inside one of the bread bags where it would be found by accident. He knocked twice and bolted down the stairwell before anyone could open up. The following day he came back properly. Lily answered, hair combed in a clean shirt, looking rested for the first time. Somebody left bags outside the door, she told him. Maybe the neighbors or Miss Patty. Huh, that's nice of them, Nathan said, keeping a straight face. She offered him a vanilla cookie. He sat in his usual chair while she settled into the corner with a cushion and a folded blanket. Still sewing? Less now. I have enough to pay Miss Patty back, and she's helping me finish some orders I still owe. What are you going to do with the rest? Save it. For Mum's medicine. He looked at her, stunned that a child so small could think that clearly. Before he left, she handed him something she'd made, a small embroidered patch with the letters NC stitched in red thread, circled by a tiny heart. Made this yesterday, she said. Nathan felt something swell in his chest, said nothing, just tucked it away carefully. Thank you, Lily. I'm taking this to the office so I don't forget what matters. On his way down, he ran into Diane Foster, his property manager, tapping down the stairs in heels with a folder under her arm. What are you doing here, boss? Personal matter. Does it have anything to do with the tenant in 4B? Why do you ask? Diane's mouth tightened. Because she's 3 months behind on rent, and according to the lease you signed off on, we're supposed to be filing for eviction this week. Nathan didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, and something in his gut already knew this conversation was only the beginning, and nobody was taking Lily out of that apartment, not while he had any say in it. Diane wasn't stupid. The second she saw his face leaving that building, carrying an embroidered pouch of all things, she knew something was off. Nathan didn't get involved with tenants. That was her job, and he liked it that way. If there was one thing that grated on Diane, it was being kept out of the loop, especially where the business was concerned. She dug in that same afternoon, pulled up property records, rent histories, correspondence. She found personal transfers from Nathan's own account to Cleveland General's billing office and small payments to a local pharmacy. He was quietly covering costs without telling anyone, not the accountant, not the majority partner, Nobody. And that's when her expression changed. Diane had no emotional stake in any of it. She didn't care about the girl, the illness, the poverty. What she saw was an opportunity. If Nathan was moving money undeclared, that was a liability. And a liability could be used to push him out, to take control. She'd thought about it before. Nathan was talented, sure, but he was also impulsive, trusting, careless with the wrong things. In a company this size, that was a weakness worth exploiting. The next morning, Diane went to the building alone, climbed to the 4th floor with her folder under her arm, and knocked hard on 4B. Lily opened the door. She didn't recognize this woman. "Is your mother home?" Diane asked flatly. "No, she's in the hospital." "And who are you?" Diane looked her over with a mix of discomfort and judgment. She wasn't used to dealing with children, especially ones who looked her dead in the eye. "Tell your mother she has 3 days to vacate." "I'm sorry, but there are no exceptions." "My mom is sick," Lily said, not moving. "I know, and I'm sorry you're going through this, but I don't have another option. These are the owner's rules." Lily said nothing. She just closed the door slowly. She didn't cry, didn't argue, and somehow that unsettled Diane more than any outburst would have. On her way out, Diane crossed paths with Rosalind on the stairs. The old woman looked her up and down. "You the one who left that eviction notice?" "That's my job. Nothing personal." "Sure, that's what they all say," Rosalind muttered. "But when that little girl's out on the street, are you going to be the one explaining why? Or are you just going to sign another piece of paper?" Diane didn't respond. She left without looking back. That afternoon, Lily walked to the hospital with a folded eviction notice in her backpack and showed it to her mother. Sarah read it and closed her eyes, too weak to speak, and just reached out to stroke her daughter's hair. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll get through this." Her voice was fading. Meanwhile, Nathan got a call from a blocked number. Diane's voice sharp as ever. "You have 24 hours to sign off on that eviction. If you don't, I'm sending the full file to the partners, including every bank transfer you've made. Your call." Nathan hung up without a word, his jaw tight with rage. But a plan was already taking shape in his head. He came back to the apartment that evening, the same eviction notice sitting on the table between them. Diane, brought you this?" Lily nodded without looking up. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I can't pay. I don't have anywhere to go, but if I leave, how's my mom going to know where to find me?" Nathan closed his eyes for a second. It hurt more than any blow could. Lily wasn't worried about herself. She was worried her mother wouldn't know where she was. "You're not going anywhere," he said, firm. "I won't let that happen. I promise." "But you're not the owner." "I am." "Then why are they trying to kick us out?" "Because some people only see numbers. I see people. And you're not a debt. You're a kid doing more than most grown adults ever would." She didn't answer, but for the first time in days her shoulders eased, like her whole body had let go of some of the tension it had been carrying. "Can I go see my mom tomorrow?" "Of course. In fact, I'll drive you. 8 o'clock sharp." Her eyes went wide. "You will?" "Yes, if that's all right with you." She nodded, then went to her room and came back with a small cloth bag holding a single apple. "This is for you. It's the last one, but it's good. I saved it because I thought maybe there wouldn't be anything left tomorrow." Nathan took it carefully, like it was something precious, something sealed between them right then, without a single signature. On the way down, he ran into Rosalind, sweeping the entryway. "What are you two going to do, Mr. Cole?" "Whatever it takes." "Then you'd better move fast, because that girl can't take another hit, and Sarah doesn't have much time left." Nathan looked her dead in the eye. "I'm not leaving them." Rosalind nodded. "Then hurry, because the one in the heels is already talking about calling in lawyers if the order doesn't go through this week. And that one doesn't stop for anybody." The next morning, Nathan pulled up at 7:30. Lily was already waiting on the stairs with a small backpack, nervous but excited. They drove to the hospital, mostly in silence. Near the end, she asked, "Do you think Mum knows I want to stay with her?" "Yes, and she knows she's got a daughter worth more than gold." They walked in together. Sarah lay in bed, paler and frailer than before. Lily approached, hugged her carefully, and stayed there without letting go. Nathan watched from the doorway, present without intruding. A quiet shadow that didn't get in the way, but didn't leave either. Diane, meanwhile, was on the phone with lawyers, gathering documents, refusing to accept losing. She had the paperwork ready, proof of every unauthorized transfer. It was just a matter of time. But Nathan had something Diane didn't. People on his side who weren't in any file or contract, but who mattered. And that difference was about to weigh heavier than she expected. Things quieted down for a stretch. Nathan kept helping without making noise, picking Lily up every other morning to see her mother, making sure the fridge stayed stocked, and getting Miss Patty to stop by in the afternoons. Lily stopped looking at him with suspicion. She was starting to see him as someone who didn't just say things, he followed through. One afternoon, sitting in the small park near the hospital, Lily interrupted his scrolling without looking up from the leaf she was folding into shapes. "What if my mom doesn't wake up?" Nathan set his phone down. "Why do you ask that?" "The nurse said yesterday she was more tired than before, that sometimes bodies just give out." "And what do you think?" "That if she goes, I'll be alone. And that scares me." He didn't have the right words, so he just let her talk. Sometimes that was the best he could do. That night, the hospital called. Sarah had crashed hard, was being moved to intensive care. Nathan grabbed his keys and drove straight over. Lily was already in the waiting room, having ridden the bus alone with her backpack over one shoulder, eyes red but not crying. The kind of grief that no longer comes out in tears, just burns quietly inside. A doctor came out and explained, in careful language, that Sarah's body wasn't responding to treatment the way they'd hoped, that they were doing everything they could, but couldn't promise anything. Nathan didn't wait. He called in a private physician he trusted, someone who confirmed there was an experimental treatment being run out of Lakeside Memorial, a private hospital across town. Expensive, complicated, but real. Sarah needed to be moved, and fast. "Do it," Nathan said. "I'll cover everything." The doctor studied him. "You sure?" "More than ever." While the paperwork went through, Lily sat beside him. "What if it doesn't work?" "It will. And if it doesn't?" "Then I'll stay with you until the end, no matter what." She didn't say anything, just took his hand. Then, for the first time, she hugged him. It wasn't long or tight, but it was real. The kind of hug you give when words run out, and all that's left is trust. The transfer went smoothly. Sarah was rushed into intensive care at Lakeside the moment the ambulance pulled in. Nathan signed every form, authorized every treatment, handed over his card without even glancing at the total. It didn't matter. He wanted to save that woman, not for himself, but for the girl who had already changed his life. While all that unfolded, Diane was moving just as fast, but towards something else entirely. She'd gotten a judge's signature on the eviction, quietly, without telling Nathan, using contacts and a notification firm that specialized in exactly this kind of work. That Friday at noon, 2 people in plain clothes showed up at the building with paperwork in hand. Nobody answered at 4B. Lily and Sarah were both at the hospital. Only Rosalind was there, and she came running down when she saw them. "What do you think you're doing?" "Executing an eviction order. The woman's in the hospital, so is the girl." "That's not our concern, ma'am. We just carry out what's been signed." They let themselves in with a key someone had handed over and started packing. Nothing broken, but plenty that hurt to watch. Lily's drawings peeled off the wall, her school notebook, a bag of colored thread, a one-eyed stuffed animal, all boxed up and labeled personal items. Rosalind watched from the doorway, furious, helpless. She called Nathan over and over. He didn't pick up. He was in the waiting room at Lakeside. Diane showed up in person later that day to supervise. "Let me know when you're done. I don't want mistakes." "What do we do with what's left?" "Toss it." "And if the girl comes back?" Diane paused half a second. "Not my problem." And she left. Hours later, with Sarah stable but not out of danger, Nathan and Lily headed back to rest and eat something. They had no idea what waited for them. Rosalind met them at the entrance, face tight with worry, and led them straight up without a word. Lily ran ahead, not expecting anything unusual, until she reached her door and froze. A white notice was taped across it. Eviction executed. Do not force entry. What is this? Lily's voice shook. Nathan rushed over, tried the handle. Sealed. He ran down to the building manager, who could only say, "They came today with court papers. I didn't know what to do." Nathan checked his phone. 20 missed calls, all from Rosalind, and one message. "They took everything, Nathan. Diane sent people to clear it out. I tried to stop them. They wouldn't listen." Lily stood frozen in front of the door. "Where's my stuff?" "We'll fix this, I promise," Nathan said, trying to hold steady. "They kicked us out." "Yes, but it wasn't my call, I swear to you." "Was it her? The lady?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He didn't want the girl carrying hate, but he couldn't hide it either. Yes, it was her. Lily looked down, turned, and walked down the stairs without another word. Nathan followed, talked to her, but she didn't respond. That night he brought her home with him, gave her one of the guest rooms, warmed up soup and hot chocolate. She ate in silence, not complaining, just swallowing slowly like part of her wasn't fully there. When she finished, she sat curled up on the couch, hugging her knees. "What if my mom dies while I'm here?" "That's not going to happen. And if it does? Then I promise you'll have somebody by your side, always." She looked at him for the first time all day. "She told me she'd never leave me alone. And she's not going to. Neither am I." Later, once Lily had finally fallen asleep, Nathan stepped onto the balcony and called Diane. "Why would you do that without telling me?" "Because you didn't have the guts to. And if you don't like it, you know what to do." "You crossed a line, Diane. This isn't a game, it isn't a company, and you're forgetting that. I'm going to fix this. Do whatever you want, but watch your step. I have every deposit, every transfer. Push me, and I won't go easy on you." "Then get ready," Nathan said and hung up. He didn't know exactly how yet, but he'd decided right then that he wasn't letting her win. Not against Lily, not against Sarah, not against anybody. Morning broke with rain, not the gentle kind, but a real storm, wind and thunder and a heavy dark hanging over the whole city. Nathan woke before sunrise, not because of the weather, but because Lily's bed was empty. No note, no backpack, no sound. His pulse spiked. He called the hospital first. Sarah was still in the ICU, stable, but no visitors that morning, so Lily hadn't gone there. He drove back to the old building, though he knew the apartment was empty. Rosalind answered half asleep. "Has the girl come by?" "What girl?" "Lily. She's missing since early this morning." "No, honey, but wait. I heard footsteps on the stairs around 3. Figured it was somebody from the other building." Nathan drove without direction, checking the corner store where Lily bought bread, the pharmacy where she'd once picked up medicine. Nobody had seen her. He pulled security footage from the old building, and there she was, a blurry clip of her walking out alone at 3:15 a.m., an oversized jacket over her shoulders, backpack swinging. Where would a 7-year-old go alone at that hour? Then it hit him. The shelter. Rosalind had once mentioned that when Sarah was first hospitalized, they'd stayed a few nights at a women's shelter near the old public hospital. Nathan drove there through the rain, brakes squealing at every light, and rang the bell hard. A woman in a raincoat over her pajamas opened up. "The girl," Nathan blurted before she could speak. 7 years old, straight brown hair, blue backpack. "Are you her father?" "No, her guardian." "Please, is she here or not?" "Yes. Came in soaked, shaking before dawn. Said she needed somewhere safe because her mother was in the hospital and she had no home." Nathan closed his eyes in relief. Inside, the shelter smelled of warm soup and damp laundry. In the corner on a cot, wrapped in a blanket, sat Lily, muddy shoes beside her, staring at the ceiling. When she saw him, she didn't get up, just looked at him, unsure whether to feel relieved or afraid. "Why did you leave like that?" Nathan asked, sitting beside her. "Because I don't have a home anymore and I didn't want to be a bother to you." "You think you're a bother to me?" She looked down. "I just needed somewhere to think. I don't want my mom to wake up and me not have anywhere to be." He pulled her into a hug. "Lily, you are not alone, not anymore. I don't want her to die without knowing where I am. That's not going to happen. Today we're going back to the hospital, and this time you're going to have somewhere close by like you want. No more moving around, no more hiding." That same morning, Nathan set everything in motion. hired his attorney, laid out what Diane had done, requested an injunction to freeze any further action while he sorted out the legal mess, and asked for a full review of every document she'd signed on his behalf. He suspected there was more buried underneath. He then went to Lakeside Memorial and arranged a small room for Lily near her mother's ward. Didn't matter if it was just a cot by the staff break room. He wanted her close. That afternoon, Lily visited her mother again, calmer this time, whispering that she wasn't scared anymore, that she knew now somebody was looking out for her. Sarah couldn't respond, but a tear slid from the corner of her eye. Nathan watched, a lump rising in his throat. That night, while Lily finally slept on a fold-out couch nearby, he got an email from his attorney. Diane hadn't just carried out the eviction without authorization. She'd also filed a forged limited power of attorney to make legal decisions on the company's behalf. Not just a threat anymore. She was playing dirty, and the fight had only just begun. The first time Lily walked into the new place she'd be living, she stood frozen in the doorway. It wasn't a rundown apartment or a converted storage unit. It was a small, well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood, a little front yard, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a modern stove. Nathan hadn't told her much, just, "We're going somewhere you'll be safe." And there they were. She didn't move, backpack hanging off one shoulder, eyes wide. "We're going to live here. It's your house now. Are you going to live here too?" "No, but I'll come by every day, or whenever you want me to." She walked slowly to the middle of the living room, touched a chair, then the table, looked out the window. Hard to believe, in the kitchen, groceries, bottled water, new dishes. In one bedroom, a bed with clean sheets, a nightlight, even a box of crayons on the nightstand. Everything ready for her. "I can stay by myself if you want, but I can also stick around a bit," Nathan offered. "I want to try," she said. "I want to see what it feels like to be at peace." She said it so seriously, so sincerely, that something in his chest tightened. He let her explore at her own pace while he talked outside with Clara, a nurse he'd hired on a doctor's recommendation, who'd be on call around the clock, for Lily and for anything hospital-related. Clara wasn't the stiff clinical type. She was warm, easygoing, the kind who listens before she talks. Lily eyed her sideways but said nothing. Nathan introduced her simply as a friend who'd be stopping by. He didn't want the girl feeling watched. That night was different. Lily slept with her door open, not out of fear, but so she could hear if anyone arrived. Nathan, from the living room, listened to her breathing even out, steady, undisturbed the whole night. By 6 the next morning, she was already up, sitting in the kitchen with warm milk and an open notebook. "I'm writing to my mum," she told him. "I want her to know we're okay. Can I help with anything? Can you take me to the hospital after?" "Whenever you want." That morning they drove over with soft music playing, Lily talking about school, about a teacher who'd given her a nice pencil, about how she missed sewing but didn't feel the pressure of it anymore. There was a calm in her voice that hadn't been there before. Sarah was awake but weak, barely able to speak. Lily showed her the letter, simple drawings of herself, of Nathan, of the new house, and one big sentence: "Everything's better now, Mum." Sarah smiled, faint but real. "Thank you," she managed. Nathan stood back, not needing to hear the words to feel his chest ease just watching them. That week, Lily started eating better, sleeping easier. Clara enrolled her at the nearest school. No complications. One of the teachers understood the situation and welcomed her in right away. It was a modest neighborhood school, but full of good people. Lily didn't ask for much, just a new notebook and a pencil with an eraser. Nathan bought her a whole backpack, and she packed it carefully like it held a treasure. Sarah, meanwhile, responded slowly to treatment. No miracle recovery, but the change of hospital, the rest, the new medications, it was working. Sometimes she'd open her eyes and ask for Lily, or request small things: soup, juice, a flowered blanket. Nathan handled everything. One afternoon, the doctor sat down with him. "Her situation is still delicate, but she's fighting, and having her daughter close keeps her going. You think she can recover? With what we're doing, she has a real shot. Not guaranteed, but possible." For Nathan, that was everything. A real shot. A second chance. Still, he knew Diane wasn't done. Since his lawyer's last message, she'd gone quiet, but that didn't reassure him. He knew her well enough to know silence meant she was building something bigger. So he started moving his own pieces, gathering documents, backup emails, an accountant's report of every move Diane had made in the past weeks. If he was going to defend Lily and Sarah, he was going to do it with everything he had. One night, driving back from the hospital, Lily asked him out of nowhere, "Why are you doing all this for us?" He glanced over at a red light. "Because someone had to. But why you?" "Because I have what it takes, and because you deserve it." She said nothing else, just rested her head against the window, and though she never said it out loud, in that moment she understood she finally had something that couldn't be bought or asked for. Someone who wasn't going anywhere. Diane didn't know how to lose. She'd learned young that the world belonged to people who moved, not to people who waited for good things to fall in their lap. So when she found out Nathan had not only blocked the eviction legally, but brought in lawyers to review everything she'd signed, she knew she had to move fast. She called a former contractor from the accounting department, someone who owed her a favor, and had him dig up everything on Nathan's recent finances, accounts, expenses, donations, anything that could look suspicious. "I want to know what he's up to, and if I can use it against him," she told him flatly. He hesitated, but Diane offered money and he folded. Within a week she had a full file, private transfers, medical bills paid with what she claimed was company money, even transport receipts under Sarah's name. She built her case. First, a report designed to make it look like Nathan was funneling company resources to outside individuals without authorization, dressed up with inflated loss figures and cherry-picked emails, stripped of the context where he explained these were personal expenses. Second, she went straight to two senior partners, presenting it all as though she was simply worried about the company. "I don't want to make a scene," she said sweetly, as though it pained her. "But this could turn into a real financial liability, and I don't want it landing on all of us." The partners, staring at all the numbers and documents, started to doubt. Diane planted the idea carefully that Nathan was acting emotionally, recklessly, even irresponsibly. He's spending company money like it's his own personal fund, over a sick tenant and a kid who isn't even related to him. One partner scoffed. "A random kid, and he's doing this without us even knowing." "Exactly," Diane said, lowering her voice. "And that could bring real legal consequences if anyone investigates." The idea took root. Diane wasn't after a slap on the wrist. She wanted him out entirely, and she knew she needed more support for that, so she moved carefully, floor by floor, dropping lines to trusted staff. "He's not himself anymore. Something's off. He's hiding something." The strategy was simple: isolate him. Nathan, meanwhile, had no idea how far it had gone. He thought Diane had been sidelined after he blocked the eviction, not realizing she was working from the inside the whole time. One day, back at his office, he found a letter on his desk, a notice to appear before an emergency partners meeting over misuse of company resources. He read it twice, couldn't believe it. Every dollar he'd spent on Sarah and Lily had come from his own pocket, not the company's, but the document painted it as something else entirely, laid out like corporate fraud. He called his attorney. "Diane's behind this. Has to be." "You have proof?" "Not yet, but I will." "You'd better move fast, because that document is built to take you down, and if you don't defend yourself right, they can push you out legally." He didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but from rage. He knew Diane played dirty, but this was a new level, and the worst part was he couldn't tell Lily any of it. She had enough on her plate with her mother still in the hospital. The next day he asked Clara to watch Lily full-time, left her cash, food, clean clothes, and went to the company's legal office, requesting access to the records. He wanted to know who had authorized the document, and there it was, Diane's signature, forged, but well done. "I'll need a copy of this," he told the legal assistant, "and access to Diane's emails from the past few months. Can't give you that without a court order. Then get me the general counsel. This is serious." Throughout the day, Nathan realized just how alone he'd become. Several employees no longer greeted him the way they used to. Others avoided eye contact. Diane was gaining ground, She had power, connections, and a face that read as reasonable in every room she walked into. Everything she said sounded logical, and that was exactly what made it dangerous. Her plan looked legal. That evening he got an anonymous call. A voice told him something crucial. "Diane's looking into the girl. She wants to prove you're living with her to accuse you of an illegal custody arrangement." "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter, just protect her. And don't trust anybody." Nathan hung up, sat in silence. This wasn't just about him anymore. If Diane managed to drag Lily into a scandal, it could threaten Sarah's custody entirely. And worse, Lily could end up in the foster system with no way back. That he could not let happen. He called Lakeside. "How's Sarah?" "Stable, but very weak. Didn't respond much today. Can she take a short visit tonight?" "A brief one." He went that evening, sat beside her bed. "Sarah, I need you to trust me. Diane's trying to worm her way into our lives, and I won't let her. I'm going to protect Lily like she's mine, but I need you with me, even just a little, so the paperwork's clean, so Diane can't touch her." Sarah opened her eyes for a second, murmured something faint, but Nathan understood enough. "I trust you." And with that, he knew he had to see this through to the end, whatever the cost. Lily stood in front of the mirror in her new school uniform. A crisp white blouse, a navy skirt, shoes that still smelled like the store. She looked strange to herself, like she wasn't sure if it was really her. Nathan watched from the doorway with a quiet smile. "You look good?" he asked. "Really? Really like a kid ready to start something new." Clara walked her to school that first day. It was a small campus with a tall fence and animal murals painted on the walls. The principal greeted her kindly, didn't ask too many questions. He already knew her situation. Her teacher, a woman with a warm face, brought her to the classroom, introduced her to the other kids, seated her next to a girl with long braids, who lent her a pencil right away. Lily didn't say much that first day, but she watched everything, learned a few names, guarded her new notebook carefully, and at recess, when a boy walked over with a ball and asked if she wanted to play, she said yes with a small smile. For the first time in a long time, she looked like an ordinary kid. Meanwhile, Sarah kept fighting from her hospital bed. She could open her eyes wider now, move her fingers, even manage short sentences. Nathan visited every afternoon, telling her about Lily's day, what she'd eaten, how school was going, sometimes just small things, like Clara burning the toast that morning. Sarah laughed faintly, but she laughed. One day, he brought a drawing Lily had made, and Sarah held it like it was a piece of fine art. "It makes me happy to know she's getting to be a kid," she said, her voice weak. "She's happy, but she needs you." Sarah closed her eyes. "I'm fighting for her." Nathan could feel it. She was fighting to live. And if she was still here, it was because of that little girl who refused to give up on anything. Weeks passed. Lily settled into her routine. Up early, breakfast, school, homework, an afternoon visit with her mom, dinner with Clara, sometimes with Nathan if he wasn't tied up. She'd stopped sewing regularly, but kept her thread and needle in a small box, a keepsake of what she used to be. One afternoon, doing homework together, Clara asked, "Do you like your new school?" "Yeah, and my classmates too, even though one kid said I look like I'm always thinking about something." "And what did you say?" "That I was." "What do you think about so much?" "That this is nice, but I don't know how long it's going to last." Clara went quiet. She understood that feeling completely. When something good arrives after so much pain, it's frightening, because you stop trusting it. You start wondering when it's all going to fall apart again. That evening, Nathan came by with a cardboard box. "What is that?" Lily asked. "A gift. Well, a few gifts. Something somebody left for you." Inside were storybooks, a knit scarf, a small bag of candy, and a handwritten letter. "Dear Lily, life gets hard sometimes, but you're stronger than you know. Never stop dreaming, because everything you're living through, even if it feels borrowed, can be yours too. With love, Patty." It was from her old seamstress friend back at the building. Rosalind had passed the box along to Nathan. Lily hugged the box tight. "I miss Miss Patty." "Want to go visit her?" "Yeah, but not yet. I want to wait until Mom's better. I want to bring her with me." Nathan understood. Lily didn't want to revisit the past unless it was with her mother by her side. Things seemed to be improving, but not entirely. Nathan was still fighting at the company. Diane had rallied more partners to her side and called an emergency meeting to discuss his temporary removal. They were trying to push him out, paint him as reckless for spending money without permission. He, meanwhile, was building his defense. Proof, testimony, documents showing every dollar had come from his own accounts. But that wasn't enough. Diane knew how to move influence, how to make numbers look however she wanted. One night his attorney texted him, "Diane's pushing the board for an urgent vote. You don't have much time." Nathan looked at his phone in silence. Then he glanced at Lily, asleep on the couch with a book open on her chest, and made up his mind. He wasn't losing this fight. Not out of pride, not for revenge, but because it wasn't just business anymore. It was about protecting what he'd built, making sure that little girl could keep living her new life, even if it was borrowed, even if it was temporary. Because if Lily could dream again, then it was worth fighting for all of it. It was Tuesday morning when the notice arrived. The board meeting had been moved up, not 2 weeks out as planned, but in 3 days, with a single item on the agenda: review of administrative conduct and immediate suspension of partner Nathan Cole. They called it a hearing, though there was no courtroom, no judge, just partners sitting in judgment, no robes, no gavel, but real consequences all the same. They could remove him, freeze his accounts within the company, cut him out of every major decision, all over money he'd spent helping Sarah and Lily. Nathan read the letter, said nothing, tucked it into his briefcase, and left without telling anyone. He was furious, but he didn't show it. He was already somewhere else in his head. He knew Diane was baiting him, and he wasn't going to fall for it easily. That afternoon he met with his attorney. They went through the accusations: misuse of resources, unauthorized decisions, damage to the company's image, all dressed up to look worse than it was. Nathan had what he needed to defend himself: receipts, personal transfers, private account statements. But proving he hadn't stolen wasn't the real problem. The real problem was convincing the partners that what he'd done was right. "This isn't about paperwork anymore," his attorney told him. "It's political. If Diane has the votes, you're out. And if I show them the truth doesn't always win, Nathan. You need to connect with them. Make them see you're not the reckless man she's painted, that this wasn't a whim over some kid. It was human, not impulsive." Nathan sat quiet for a moment. "I want to speak at the hearing, not just a rebuttal. I want them to hear me as a person." "You sure?" "More than ever." Friday came. The main office buzzed from early morning. Sleek cars in the lot, pressed suits filing in with folders under their arms. Nathan arrived alone. No assistants, no entourage. Just a briefcase full of documents and a sealed envelope he hadn't shown anybody. Diane was already inside, seated at the head of the conference table, dark suit, hair pulled back, greeting everyone with a controlled smile. She knew she was winning. "Good morning, everyone," the board chairman began. "We'll open with the single item on today's agenda, the review of Nathan Cole's administrative conduct. The floor is yours, Diane." Diane rose and got straight to it, walking through the documents she'd compiled, projecting a spreadsheet of expenses, speaking calmly in a tone that sounded fair but cold. "This isn't about questioning his character," she said. "It's about protecting this company's structure. Personal decisions, however noble, cannot outweigh the agreements this board operates under." Nathan listened, arms crossed, letting her finish. When it was his turn, he stood slowly, looked at each partner in the room. Several avoided his eyes. "What Diane is saying makes sense on paper," he began, "but sense isn't always the same as right. Yes, I used my own money. Yes, I helped a sick mother and a little girl who had nobody. I'm not apologizing for that. I'd do it again." A murmur moved through the room. "I know this isn't a charity, but sometimes helping one person is what makes everything else make sense. I didn't take a single dollar that wasn't mine. Here's every receipt." He opened his briefcase, laid out pages one by one. Dates, amounts, personal accounts, everything documented. "And if you think I'm acting on impulse, let me introduce you to Lily." He pulled out the sealed envelope. Inside was a letter written in crayon. He put it on the projector. "Thank you for not leaving me alone, for giving me a home, for taking me to see my mom. When she gets better, I want to invite you to my birthday." This letter isn't here to convince you, Nathan said. It's here to remind you that out there, some things matter more than percentages. And if today you decide to remove me over this, fine, at least I'll know I did the right thing. Silence. Diane breathed slow. She hadn't expected him to speak like that, not defending himself, but speaking from something deeper. One of the older partners raised his hand. My daughter had cancer 5 years ago. I wasn't there. I buried myself in work, and to this day I regret it. What you did, Nathan, isn't common, but it's brave. Another partner spoke up. I move that we vote, but vote with a conscience, not out of fear of losing money. The vote went around the table one by one out loud, in favor of Nathan staying, in favor, against, in favor, in favor. In the end, Nathan won by a single vote. Diane's jaw tightened, but she said nothing, just stood, gathered her things, and left without a word. Her plan had failed, for now. Nathan sat still for a moment, not smiling. This wasn't victory, just relief. Outside, Clara was waiting with a missed call. He called back immediately. Everything okay? You need to come, Clara said, voice tight. It's Sarah. Something happened. And once again, everything changed. Nathan sped out of the office straight to the hospital, weaving through traffic, cutting corners he shouldn't have. Clara met him at the entrance, face serious. What happened? Respiratory crisis. She was sleeping and suddenly went into distress. Couldn't speak. The doctors stabilized her, but she's weaker than ever. Lily's with her. Won't leave the room, won't let go of her hand. Nathan walked in without hesitation. Sarah was hooked up to more machines than before, color drained from her face. Lily sat beside her, eyes red, jaw set. Not crying anymore, just holding her mother's hand, steady. How's she doing? Nathan asked quietly. Lily didn't answer, just looked at him, and that look said everything. Fear, exhaustion, frustration. That night, no one spoke, no one ate, no one slept. Nathan paced the waiting room. Clara brought coffee he never touched. All he could think about was how unfair it all was. That after everything, right when Lily had finally found a little peace, life was pushing her back to the edge again. At 5 in the morning, a doctor came out. She made it through the night, but she's very unstable. We need to try something more aggressive. No guarantees, but it could buy her more time. Is there any other option? No. Do it, Nathan said without hesitation. Whatever it takes. Hours later, sitting outside for air, exhausted, eyes swollen, someone sat down next to him without a word. Didn't expect to see you like this, a familiar voice said. He turned. Rosalind. What are you doing here? The girl texted me from Clara's phone, said her mom was real bad. Couldn't just sit at home, took the bus, walked, here I am. Nathan smiled for the first time in days. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said, pulling a small flash drive from her bag. I've got something that might help. What is it? A recording of Diane, the night they came to evict you. I heard her on the phone in the stairwell. Didn't see me, but I had my little recorder running. I like recording the sounds of the building when I can't sleep. I know, sounds odd, but I got it all. What does it say? Says plenty that could help you. Talks about forging papers, about partners she'd already bought off. Even laughs about how she's going to bring you down, proof or no proof. Nathan clenched his fist. This changes everything. Don't use it yet. Wait for the right moment. If you're going to take her down, do it right so she can't get back up. Why are you helping me? Because nobody messes with that little girl, Rosalind said, firm. Not after everything she's been through. And you earned the right to fight for her. Nathan tucked the drive into his jacket like it was gold. That same day, he took it to his attorney. I've got a recording. It's Diane. Not fully admissible, but it's clear. Fraud, manipulation, the whole plan laid out. Who recorded it? A neighbor, direct witness. Then it's useful, but we need to be careful. If we release it now, she'll claim it's edited. We need something more. Like what? Another witness. Somebody who can confirm they heard it too. Nathan thought for a second, then called Miss Patty. You were in the building the night Diane came, weren't you? Yes. I was in my kitchen. Did you hear anything? Something about everything already being arranged. that not even the owner could save them. That helps a lot. That afternoon, Nathan and his attorney put it all together. Statements, evidence, clean bank records, and now the testimony of two people with nothing to gain. A nosy but loyal neighbor and a retired seamstress. Nobody would expect them as allies, but sometimes the biggest turns come from the places nobody's watching. Before the day ended, Nathan stopped by the hospital. Clara had good news. Sarah had responded a little to the new treatment. She wasn't talking yet, but she was moving her hands, no longer sedated, eyes open, tracking Lily whenever she came near. "Your mum's fighting with everything she's got," Nathan told the girl, "and so am I, so I can't fall behind." Lily nodded, then asked quietly, "And the mean lady?" "Still not giving up, but she doesn't have as much power as she thinks." "What if she comes back?" Nathan winked. "Let her, we'll be ready." Nathan woke up that morning with a single thought in his head. Today, Diane falls. Not all the way, maybe, but enough to stop her from ever reaching in again. He put on a plain shirt, no jacket, no tie. He didn't want to look like a businessman. He wanted to look human, because that's exactly how he felt. The office was tense when he arrived. Barely anyone talked. Some greeted him out of obligation, others didn't even look up. Diane sat in her office, relaxed, sipping coffee, new glasses on. When she saw him pass, she barely lifted an eyebrow. "Morning, Nathan." "We'll see if it stays that way," he said, walking on. His attorney was already waiting in the conference room with a folder full of documents and a new flash drive. Rosalind was there too, dressed plainly, but carrying herself with a presence that filled the room. The moment Diane spotted her, her smile flickered. "What is she doing here?" "Witness," Nathan said calmly. "Witness to what?" "You'll see." The partners filed in as usual. Seniority up front, newer members toward the back. The meeting opened formally, the chairman running through the day's business. But when it reached Nathan's turn, everything shifted. "I have proof that an eviction was carried out using falsified documentation," he began, "and proof that my signature was forged on internal authorizations." Diane crossed her arms. "You're going to say that with no proof?" Nathan pulled out the flash drive. "There's a recording here," he gestured toward Rosalind. "And there's someone who was standing right there when you talked about taking me down, proof or no proof." "That doesn't prove anything," Diane snapped. "Could be edited." His attorney stepped in. "Beyond the recording, we have a second witness, a neighbor who overheard part of the same conversation and is prepared to testify if this escalates." The mood in the room shifted. Some partners no longer looked at Diane with the same confidence. Others started flipping through their own copies of the paperwork. Nathan handed out the request Diane had filed for a limited power of attorney to make legal decisions without board approval, then laid out the forged eviction document. "This has my signature. I never signed it." "That doesn't prove it was me," Diane said, visibly rattled. "Then who was it?" "The filing cabinet." A few nervous laughs. The chairman called for order, then turned to Diane directly. "Can you explain why you used documents without board approval?" Diane held the silence a moment, adjusted her hair, took a breath. "I acted to protect this company. Mr. Cole was making emotional decisions, not professional ones. Somebody had to do something. By forging signatures? I'm not admitting to that, but I'm not denying it either," Nathan replied. The silence stretched long. The chairman called a 15-minute recess. Diane sat alone. Rosalind walked straight to Nathan. "That's that, I think." "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. These people care more about protecting their investments than the truth." He wasn't wrong. After the recess, a decision came. Not the one he'd hoped for outright, but one that marked a real shift. The board has decided to suspend Diane Foster from her duties for 3 months, while the presented materials are fully investigated. She will not be removed at this time, but she loses all administrative authority, effective today. Diane's jaw tightened. She stood, gathered her things, and without a word made her way to the door. Before leaving, she stopped by Nathan. "You didn't win. You just bought yourself time." "That's enough for now," he answered. The partners filed out one by one, some stopping to offer quiet support, others giving him a pat on the shoulder that said, "You're safe for now." He didn't want any of it. He just wanted to get back to the hospital. When he arrived, Lily was sitting beside her mother's bed, reading her a story in a soft voice. Sarah could hear now, though she still lacked the strength to speak. Nathan came in quietly, not interrupting. When Lily finished the story, she looked up. "How'd it go?" "We won, more or less," she suspended. "Can't touch anything for a good while." Lily nodded, didn't smile, but the relief showed. "And are you okay, Nathan?" He thought about it. "Tired, but yeah, I'm okay." Lily looked down. "Thanks for not giving up." He sat beside her, said nothing more, just squeezed her hand. That night was quiet, the first in a long while without an emergency call, without lawyers, without threats. Nathan slept in a hospital chair with his jacket for a pillow. Everyone knew it wasn't the end, just a pause, a breath before the next round, and what came next was something nobody saw coming. The hospital had become routine for Lily. She'd walk in, say hi to Clara, head up, sit by her mother's bed, and stay for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding her hand. The doctors said Sarah was stable but fragile, like one wrong shift could tip everything over. One afternoon, sketching in her notebook in the small waiting area, Lily overheard two nurses talking, not meaning any harm, not realizing she could hear. "They say the woman in 307 has one more option, new treatment, but it costs a fortune." "Yeah, experimental. Very few people can afford it." Lily stopped drawing, glanced down the hall, got up quietly, and went to find Clara. "What treatment? What are they talking about?" "It's for my mum." Clara hesitated but didn't want to lie. "Yes, it's a new protocol they're testing. Good odds but expensive, very expensive." "Does Nathan know?" "Not yet, they're waiting on the full evaluation first." Lily nodded slowly. She didn't sleep that night, lying awake staring at the ceiling, thinking, until an idea took shape. The next day, instead of heading to the hospital, she asked Clara for permission to stop at the craft store, said she wanted paper for a card. Clara didn't suspect anything and let her go, but Lily didn't go to the craft store. She went to a print shop with computer rentals, paid for an hour, and searched online for how to sell embroidery. For the next week in secret, she started making pieces, hearts, names, phrases like "stay strong" and "everything's going to be okay." A classmate helped her take photos on her phone. Lily posted them to a small page she'd made online, offered shipping, took orders through messages, stitched names onto napkins and scraps of fabric she cut with old scissors. She arranged drop-offs through a delivery driver on the corner who'd agreed to help. She told no one. Not Nathan, not Clara, not her teacher. Every dollar she earned went into a small box hidden under her mattress, with a running tally written in pencil. Her goal was $200. She didn't know if it would be enough, but it was something. She wanted to contribute. She wanted to feel like she could help save her mother too. 2 weeks passed. One afternoon, Nathan stopped by her room to drop off a new backpack and found her asleep with a needle still in her hand, head resting on the table. Beside her, a scrap of fabric with "Sarah" stitched in purple thread. "What is she doing?" he asked, startled. Clara, right behind him, looked just as surprised, and she had no idea. "Lily," Nathan said, touching her shoulder. "What is this?" The girl jolted awake, and her face gave it away instantly. She hadn't wanted to be caught. She tried to hide the fabric, too late. Nathan saw the box of cash, the notes, the envelopes ready to mail. "Are you selling these?" Lily looked down. "Yes." "For what?" "To help. For Mum's treatment. I don't want her to die because of money." Nathan knelt in front of her, held her by the shoulders. "That's not going to happen. You don't have to carry this. It's not your responsibility." "Yes, it is," she said, firm, "because she always did everything for me. Now it's my turn to do something for her." He didn't know what to say. Something in him broke quietly. He wanted to scream, not at her, but at the world, at how unfair it was that a 7-year-old was giving up her afternoons, her play, her rest, to save her mother. "How much have you saved?" $210, she said quietly. "And how much do you need?" "I don't know. I just want to help. Even a little." Nathan closed his eyes. The next day he went to the hospital, asked about the treatment, got the full breakdown. It came to nearly $4,000, plus preliminary testing. He could pay it easily, of course, but he decided to do something different. Back home, he told Lily, "I'll cover the rest, but you're the one delivering what you saved. It's your effort, your gift, and your mother deserves to know that." The next day, box in hand, Lily walked into the doctor's office, nervous but determined. "This is for my mom's treatment," she said, setting the box on the desk. The doctor looked at her, stunned. Nathan, standing behind her, just smiled. "I'm covering the rest, but this is the part that matters most." That evening, Lily told Sarah everything she'd done. Sarah couldn't speak, but she squeezed her daughter's hand hard and cried. Silent tears, full of love, of pride, because her daughter wasn't just strong, she was a miracle. The doctors cleared the experimental treatment. Everything was in order, the money, the paperwork, the approvals, but one decision remained, the most important one. It had to be Sarah's call. She was more alert than she'd been in weeks, able to move her hands with more strength, form a few soft words. Nathan walked into the room with the papers. Lily came with him, holding the little box of embroidery scraps. Clara waited by the door. "Sarah," Nathan said, approaching the bed, "the treatment's ready. It's risky, but it's your best shot. If we don't do it now, we might not get another chance." Sarah looked at Lily. "I don't want to leave you." Lily took her hand. "I want you to get better, Mum. But if you don't want to do it, I'll be okay. Just tell me what you want." Silence. Sarah took a slow breath, every small movement clearly costing her something. Then she spoke. "Yes." One simple word, but inside it was hope, fear, and courage all at once. Nathan called the doctor, and the paperwork was signed. Surgery would be the next morning. Nobody slept well that night. Lily stayed in the hospital lounge, hugging her backpack. Clara wrapped a blanket around her and sat close by. Nathan went home to get ready. He wasn't leaving Lily alone through whatever came next. Before bed, he opened an old wooden box he'd kept for years and pulled out a folded property deed, a house he'd owned for a long time but never used, worth real money. He thought a moment, then called his real estate agent. "Sell it." "You sure? Today?" "Why?" "Because some things are worth more." By sunrise, the ambulance rolled Sarah into surgery. Lily walked beside her, holding her hand, not crying, just staring straight ahead like she already knew her whole world was about to change one way or another. The surgery took hours. Nathan and Lily waited, hearts in their throats, every minute stretching out like 10. Clara brought coffee, water, anything, but nobody touched a thing. Nearly 6 hours later, the doctor came out, visibly exhausted, pulling off his surgical cap. Nathan stood up fast. Lily ran to his side. "She made it. Surgery's over." There were some tough moments, but she responded well. Now comes the hardest part. Recovery. But yes, she's alive. Lily covered her mouth with both hands and the tears finally came. Nathan crouched to her level, held her tight. "Did we do it?" she asked. "We did it." The following days were careful, cautious ones. Sarah couldn't talk yet, but her vitals were climbing, weak but alive. And that was everything. Nathan visited every day, bringing juice, books, updates about Lily. Lily came after school, sometimes falling asleep with her head on the edge of the bed, sometimes just sitting quietly, as if being close was enough. One afternoon, while Clara washed dishes at the house, the doorbell rang. It was Diane. No suit, no folder this time, just a long coat and an envelope in her hand. Clara didn't want to let her in, but Lily had already heard the voice, recognized the name, and came to the door. "What do you want, Diane?" The woman studied her. "To talk to Nathan. But while I wait, I want to talk to you." Lily crossed her arms. "About what?" "Something that might change your whole life." The girl didn't answer, just looked at her with the kind of eyes that had already seen more than they should have. "I knew your mother a long time ago," Diane said, pulling an old photo from the envelope. "We were teenagers, sisters, but we were separated when we were small. She was adopted by another family. I ended up somewhere else. I found her years later. Never told her who I was, just approached her, and she turned me away. Said her life was already full, with you. Lily's mouth tightened. What does that have to do with anything? You're not her biological daughter. The silence sat heavy. Clara, closer now, dropped the sponge in her hand. Lily didn't move. She adopted you when you were 3 months old. Your birth mother left you at a clinic. Sarah showed up not long after, asked if she could help, and she never let go of you. Lily looked down. So what, Diane? What does that change? Diane looked stunned. It doesn't matter to you. No. Because she's my mom. She raised me, taught me to sew, held me when I was scared. Nothing else matters. Diane went quiet. And you're my aunt? Yes. And why would you want to hurt us? Diane didn't have an answer. Just then Nathan pulled up, saw Diane, and walked straight over. What are you doing here? I didn't come to fight. I came to tell the truth. Why now? Because maybe there isn't much time left for me to do anything else. Nathan looked at her, confused. I'm sick, Diane said quietly. Not like Sarah, but I don't have much longer, and I don't want to carry all this with me when I go. Lily stepped back inside, closed the door. Nathan looked at Diane one last time. Then do the right thing before you go. Diane nodded and walked off slowly. For the first time, she didn't look strong. She looked like an ordinary person, tired, alone. And inside that house, Lily braced herself for what came next because she already understood. What mattered wasn't what they'd just found out. What mattered was what came after. It didn't take long for Sarah to hear about Diane's visit. Lily told her everything, straight and unfiltered. The photo, the sisters separated as children, the adoption. Sarah didn't react with alarm. She just listened, eyes wide open. When Lily finished, Sarah squeezed her hand, not hard, but with total clarity. It doesn't matter how you came to me, she whispered, voice rough. You came and that's all that matters. Lily leaned in and hugged her carefully, mindful not to hurt her. Neither of them cried. They were past tears. Years of holding on, of loving each other without conditions had used them all up. That night Lily fell asleep sitting beside her, head resting on her mother's arm. Sarah woke weaker the next day. The treatment had slowed a lot of things down, but it was also taking a toll. Her body was holding on, but it was clearly at its limit. The doctor told Nathan that even if she pulled through, she might carry lasting effects. She needed full rest, a long recovery, but there was still hope. Nathan requested special permission to bring her home for a few days. He didn't want whatever time she had left, if that's what it turned out to be, spent in a cold room that smelled of rubbing alcohol and machines. The hospital approved it under medical supervision. Clara arranged everything. A hospital bed, oxygen, medications, round-the-clock care. Lily helped set up the room. When Sarah arrived, the whole house shifted. Softer, quieter. Nathan stopped by every afternoon, told her about work, about some ridiculous thing a partner had said, or simple things like Clara burning the tortillas. Sarah laughed very quietly, but she laughed. One night, Lily was finishing an embroidery piece on the couch when Nathan called her over. I need to tell you something, he said. She sat beside him. What's going on? He pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside was an old yellowed letter. Found this in some papers Diane handed over before she left. She said it was yours. Lily opened it slowly. It was a letter from her birth mother, the woman who had left her at the clinic when she was 3 months old. It was short. I can't keep you. I don't have any way to care for you, but I hope somebody does it better than I could. Your name isn't Valeria, I mean Lily, but that's the name that's yours now. May whoever finds you give you the love I can't. I'm sorry. Lily stared at the page without moving. Do you want to know who she was? She shook her head. I don't need to, because I already know who my mom is, and she's in that room right there. Nathan smiled. I admire you so much. I admire you too. The days went by. Sarah improved slowly in small steps. Some days she slept most of the time. Other days she talked with Lily for hours, telling stories about carrying her through fevered nights, about crying because she couldn't afford new shoes, about the time she almost thought she'd have to give her up and never did. One afternoon, with the sun going down, Sarah asked to speak with Nathan alone. Lily had gone with Clara to buy fruit. "Thank you for everything you did," Sarah said slowly. "For me, but mostly for Lily." "There's nothing to thank me for." "Yes, there is. You showed up when nobody else would. You were the only one who saw what nobody wanted to see. And that doesn't get forgotten." Nathan looked down. "I'm not going anywhere. I already decided that a long time ago." Sarah took his hand, looked at him with eyes tired but at peace. "I'm asking you for something. Anything. If something happens to me, don't let Lily end up alone. I don't want her to go through any more pain." Nathan felt his throat close up. "She'll never be alone, not ever. I'm trusting you with her." That was the last thing they said to each other. That night, Sarah passed away in her sleep, quietly, without pain. Clara noticed first and called Nathan, who went in silence to wake Lily. The girl walked to her mother's side, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Thank you." She didn't scream, didn't cry, just rested her head against her chest, as if she could still hear her heart. The service was small, just the people who really mattered. Nathan, Clara, Rosalind, Patty, and a nurse from the hospital who'd always saved them a seat in the waiting room. Lily didn't want flowers, just a folded letter she tucked into her mother's pocket. "Everything's going to be okay, Mom. Now it's my turn to watch over you from here." Months passed. Diane disappeared. Nobody heard from her again. Some said she'd moved out of state, others that she'd gotten sicker. Nathan never asked. Lily stayed in school. Nathan handled the paperwork to become her legal guardian. It wasn't easy, but after everything they'd been through, there was no other way it could end. One day, cleaning out Sarah's closet, Lily found a box tucked away. Drawings, embroidered napkins, the first letter she'd ever written her mom back in kindergarten, and underneath it all, a sealed envelope with her name on it. She opened it. A page in Sarah's handwriting. "Lily, you were never my daughter by blood, but you were my greatest love. Thank you for saving me. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But don't be afraid. Life goes on, and you, my girl, know how to fight, because you learned it on your own. I was only ever there to hold you after every battle. Now it's your turn to fly, and his turn to look after you the way I would. Don't ever let anyone dim your light." Lily folded the letter carefully and went out to the backyard, where Nathan was trimming the plants. She looked at him and asked, "Will you teach me to drive?" He looked at her, confused. "Drive what?" "Life." And the two of them laughed, because yes, after everything they were still here, still alive, still together, and that was enough. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. I want to hear what part hit you the hardest. Give this video a like if you believe every child deserves someone who refuses to walk away. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we've got more stories like this one coming every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.